Man, I wish that I had the memory techniques I'm about to show you for remembering the names of all the guitar strings and their order when I was younger. It would have put me so far ahead of the game in my music learning journey. And there are a couple of ways I'm going to show you that are based on different things I've done just to remember music overall, but starting with the guitar strings. You know, there's acronyms and acrostics. So a very simple one, which I don't personally like, I don't think it's strong enough, but it might work for you, is something like everyone for E, everyone average, see it's a little difficult to remember, does get better eventually. This is everyone for E, average, A, D for does, G for get, B for better, and then E for eventually. Now, one reason why I don't find that particularly strong compared to some of the other techniques we're going to talk about today is because you have to remember that sentence, right? And I like, in the magnetic memory method world, to always base everything I'm memorizing on something that I already know in my memory that's 100% already there. So maybe you're not my age and this might not make sense to you, but I'll try to give you a couple of other examples. Ernie from Sesame Street links beautifully with the E string, and he's already in my memory, and I can even use his voice to hear E, 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 or however that note sounds. I don't have perfect pitch, but you know, I can place him right here on this tuning peg and then follow him doing a journey along the E all the way up, and then that will help me remember this is E for Ernie. Now, if you're not of the Sesame Street age as I am, you know, there's Eminem, who could be associated here, and then you have another E string down here, right, which we had for eventually, everyone, and then eventually in that previous sentence. You could have Eminem as a baby, or Ernie as a baby. Another thing, if you use Ernie Ball Strings, and this video is not sponsored, but thumbs up for Ernie Ball Strings, they're pretty good. You could use Ernie Ball Strings as an association for your top E, and just having a massive, fat Ernie Ball string and then a skinny, emaciated one down at the bottom. And you could even imagine these in your hands, these specific references that are already in your memory. Now, using this methodology of information or images or associations that are already in your memory, you just move down to the next string and you have A, and I use Al Pacino, a great actor. I don't know if he's that active anymore, but you know, you can think of all kinds of A people. Adam West, who played Batman, and Adam Sandler, the comedian. Lots and lots of options, and surely you have someone. You may even have an uncle named Al or something like that. Then you just link that here as well. So you go from E to A, and so you have like your Ernie figure or your Eminem figure, and then you have Al, let's say. And then you just keep moving along, and then you get to your D string, and I used to use Dracula, and I still do use Dracula sometimes for memorizing music on that string. Then we move on to the G string, and here I have Grover again from Sesame Street, so I would move down to this tuning peg, and then coming along to B, we would have someone like just a guy I know named Bob, and then back to E, right? So now we can make a specific story that helps us remember the order, where we can have Eminem doing something really, really crude to Adam Sandler. And you could even just imagine them on an elevator together, and they're going from the top to the bottom in this story. So Eminem in a really crude building, let's not name exactly what kind of building it is on an elevator with Adam Sandler, and he's going down, and he does something nasty, like pushes Adam Sandler into the wall. And then Dracula emerges from the wall as they keep going down, down, down through the elevator, and Grover gets involved, and then Bob gets involved, and then by this time, Eminem is defeated, and he's a tiny little Eminem, and he slinks away on the bottom floor, never to be seen again. That kind of thing can be very, very powerful. Now, if I put the guitar aside here for a second, there's another way that you can practice, and you know, you do want to have the guitar in your hand as much as you can, but you can't always carry a guitar around to practice getting these notes into long-term memory. So one thing that you can do, I just put a little example together for you, is get a bunch of index cards. And this index card here has a gray elephant, and then there's an arrow pointing to the first string on the tuning area, the tuning head. So the elephant being gray is the low E, because E is for elephant, and then it's an elephant because elephants are heavy and low notes are heavy, especially in heavy metal. And then you just point that on the card to the E on the tuning fret, and then I have painted it red or colored it red just so that when I look at it, I know that that's what it is. Now there's no answer on the back, and that's a mnemonic principle. It's related to something called a Cloze test, where you restrict the answer, and it's related to another principle in memory science called active recall. So if you force yourself to solve this puzzle, you're going to form the memory a lot faster. And you can take 6 of these, or 7 if you have a 7-string guitar, or 8 if you have an 8-string guitar. Take these, and then what's cool about cards is you can shuffle them up and then practice your recall out of order. So you might get an elephant for D, and then you might have a different drawing with Dracula that points to a different area on your tuning head. And then you get them all out of order, but you're still naming them correctly and thinking about where they are on your instrument. And that's a beautiful little exercise that you can do. Another thing that you can do in a notebook is just practice writing out the note order from memory, and even draw a tuning head, and you draw it out and you name the notes and make it maybe a drawing of your own instrument. And you can personalize it a little bit more by making some colors. And it's just a wonderful way to get your hands involved when you're not with the instrument, and practice that a couple of times. You're probably going to nail it after 2 or 3 times, and then you pick up that instrument again and you can just practice with the instrument. So you can practice singing along, like E, A, D, G, B, E, that sort of thing. I don't know if my tone is correct there, but nonetheless, just in general, singing the notes is a great thing to do. So let's just pretend I'm in tune, which I'm not, and I can be like E, 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 yeah, that's a bad E, and then G, G, and then you can think, well, where is my G on the actual instrument when you're linking to the 3rd fret? Now there's a whole big talk that we can have together about all of the placement of the notes all across the fretboard, using the memory palace technique, which turns any instrument, I don't care if it's a guitar or a piano or a trombone or a flute, I've learned all of those instruments to varying degrees, even the sitar. You can turn the whole instrument into what's called a memory palace or method of loci, and then when you look at various areas, you can just go, okay, so on the 7th fret, I have an image for 7, and that's going to help me remember that that's also an E. And then if I go up to the E string on this 7th fret, then that's going to be a B, and then this is going to be a B over here too on the A string and the B. But that's a little bit more of an advanced numerical mnemonic system that you can learn about in the Magnetic Memory Method Masterclass. Or if you want to get involved, get registered at my website, and there are many live streams. Music is one of the elements of what I call having a sovereign mind. One of my books was called The Victorious Mind, and it talks about music and some of my touring history with bands, and how that I used these various memory techniques to get by in life, essentially, and be able to get on tour with a band. And so the next element of that journey is the sovereign mind, and there are 12 categories in total, this sovereign mind methodology. And if you get through all 12, you'll find that music is one of them, along with many other essential structures that you can learn and make for a full life and develop a sovereign mind. So that's at the Magnetic Memory Method website. If you're new here and you like this kind of training, hit that thumbs up, get subscribed. And another thing that you can do that's really helpful is to just start to name the notes in forward and backward order, but then also out of order. So this is based on a principle called spaced repetition. And so if you go like this, you start at E, and then you skip the A in your mind and you go to D, and then you skip the G and you go to B, so it would be like E, D, B, and then you go back to E, and then you go to G and then A. So you're skipping the stations forward and backward, and you're going to need to learn string skipping eventually, but this is going to help you just mentally learn the strings faster, because in spaced repetition there's various principles. It's a big science speech, but at the end of the day, I mean, if you want the science speech, I've got it. But I know you just want to get practicing guitar. So power to your journey. And if you're interested in more, and if you want to watch an older video where I'm playing bass, the same principles apply, and I play a little bit of Bach for you on my bass from memory, and that's from years and years ago on this channel. So go ahead and click that up on the screen, or it'll have a link in the description below, and The more advanced techniques I really needed to use to learn Bach, and I needed to learn them to be on tour with a band because it was complicated music. And I'm so glad that I had this technique and the more advanced technique that I talk about in the music element of the Magnetic Memory Method Sovereign Mind program. So I hope to have you at one of our live boot camps, and thank you again for watching. Until we have a chance to speak again, play some music and keep yourself magnetic.